Polygon count, schmolygon count. Today on the Game Shelf, we're gonna fight World War II the way it was actually won. With little plastic men. Hello and welcome to the Game Shelf. I'm J-Mac.
And I'm Joe, filling in for Matt, who was eaten by a Gru.
That was where he was last week. Didn't we have a backup of him?
We did, but I taped over it.
Oh, Joe.
I'm sorry, but it was Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet.
Say no more, my friend. Well, hang in there, Matt. We'll figure something out. This month, we're talking about war games. Now, when I speak of war games today, I don't mean what war games meant 10 or 20 years ago, where the genre in gaming was dominated by companies like Avalon Hill that made, you know, hardcore games where you moved little paper hexes around, or rather little paper counters around on hexagonal maps, and you had to consult, you know, very thick instruction books with charts and tables, and games took a weekend or several weeks to play. Games I'm interested in, as you probably figured out by now if you've been watching the show, are more lighthearted and don't take so long to play. Fortunately, in the last few years, a lot of games that you could call war games have appeared that take the more broad definition of war games, which is to say games that are a simulation of the projection and application of force in conflict, where the pieces on the board actually are representative of army units, and takes that concept and puts it into a sort of a more lighter, more easily playable format. Of course, if you abstract that far enough, you could call even chess a war game. And later in the show, we'll actually be looking at another abstract war game. But first, we're going to talk about a more concrete war game, Memoir 44, which was published in 2004 by Days of Wonder. It was created by Richard Borg, who is designing a series of war games. He published one a few years ago called Battle Cry, which used a similar core mechanic as Memoir 44. That mechanic being that at any time, both players have a hand of cards that limit what they can do on their turn. I actually love this. It forces you to always have to think tactically. You can sit down at the table with a strategy in mind about what you're going to do, and in fact, you should do that. You're doomed if you don't have a strategy when you're playing a war game. But it also sneaks in a random element, the cards themselves, which you draw and replenish as the game goes on, that forces you to basically think on your toes, because you can maybe only do 5 or 6 different possible things on your turn. They may not, and one of those, or rather the thing that you want to do, may not be among those 5 or 6 things. As the title implies, the theme of the game is about the Allied liberation of France from Germany in 1944. The game does not cover the entire war, but rather every game you play is a scenario based on a different engagement from that theater. The board itself is modular. You can see here Joe and Karl playing on the one side of the board, which represents a beach landing. On the other side, which you can't see here, it's a green battlefield. The game also comes with small cardboard hexagonal terrain counters, which you can set up on the board. So during the setup, the players basically choose a scenario from the rule book. It comes with, I think, a dozen, maybe a little more than that, or from scenarios that are listed on the Days of Wonder website. And a nice thing is that they have a system where fans of the game can design their own scenarios, and the designer, Richard Borg, occasionally puts a new one up every now and then. The players place, according to the scenario's map, they put new terrain and figures on the board as necessary. Actually, the game does take a while to set up, so rather than force you to watch Joe and Karl put all the little plastic men on the board, I'm going to do the Julia Child thing and go right to the first couple of turns of the game so you can see how it works.
I'm going to do an assault, center assault, all units.
Okay. All units.
Doesn't
That's like 5 units.
Yeah. Well, isn't that the...
Even the tank that's lying on its side.
I know. It's amazing. So to get onto the beach is going to... They basically can only move one, right? To get on the...
Okay, the ones that are in the water are in the ocean. Maximum movement is 1 hex. Cannot battle or retreat in ocean, so you can move 1 space.
And the beaches are probably up to 2.
Maximum onto beaches is 2 hexes, but since you're starting on the...
Yeah. So I only get to do 1 on there.
Right.
And basically 1 on here. And the rest of these can come up 1.
Yep.
I'll do that, yeah. As far as you know.
Should I do that or should I do that? I will do this. Let's recon in force. 1 guy from each side. And so these guys can do 2 dice against them. These guys 2 against them. These only 1 against him. But
that's what you're doing. Okay.
Actually,
do I roll or do I not roll?
No, I roll.
You just roll. Okay.
Actually, I think he's going to shoot at them, but we'll do it. So we'll do it in order, left to right.
Okay.
So these guys, 2 dice against them. 1 retreat. So you have to move back 1 space.
The whole cadre
Yes.
back 1.
Yeah. Basically, each unit is sort of like.
I
think of it like 1 character with that many hit points. So.
Gotcha. As long as you continually bring it back to D&D, I'm with you.
Yeah.
As you saw, the turns are simple. Each player basically chooses one of the cards in front of them and plays it. When you play a card, there are different types of cards. Generally, what the card does is let you choose some of the units on the board, some of your units, and issue orders to them. An order simply means that that unit gets to move and attack if an enemy unit is in range after it moves, or after it doesn't move. You can stand pat and attack too. The way it moves and attacks depends on the kind of unit it is and the kind of terrain that the unit may be on, the enemy unit may be on, and what's in between. There are 3 kinds of units. Basically, there are infantry who are they're slow and they're vulnerable, but they're the most flexible units, and they can basically, they're best at attacking fortified positions. There are armor units, which have the little tank figures you saw. These are fast, and they do a lot of damage, but they're not very good at attacking into or even out of fortifications or cities. And there are artillery, which in the scenario that Joe and Karl were playing, that didn't happen to be on the board. They tend to be rare. They're very slow, but they are extremely powerful. They're also kind of fragile. You also saw the use of dice. Basically, the way that you resolve battle is you simply throw some dice. The more dice you throw, the better chance you have of scoring a hit. Though factors like terrain, again, and range can reduce the number of dice you get to roll. You record hits on a unit simply by removing figures from it. If a unit loses all of its figures, it's destroyed, and the person who, the player who did the attack gets a victory point. Generally, the goal of every scenario is to get a set number of victory points.
Left flank attack by 3. I'm going to do...
Move that little wonder tank in and
move this guy up. Oh my goodness. Oh my god. If I just move these 1, I'll still get 1 die on that. If I attack those guys, so.
You may not even want to move that tank up because 3 dice against them anyway.
Yeah, I know.
Or them.
I'll just leave it there because it'll, well, whatever. Fine. Good. I'm attacking with my tank, and that gets 2 dice? 2 dice.
No,
3 dice.
3 against the infantry or the tanks.
No.
Really? You're doing the infantry?
I will do... Oh, I should take out the tanks.
Yeah, the infantry are easy to hit. Because the die has 2 infantry faces and only 1 tank face.
I'm gonna try to wipe out the infantry and get some kind of 1.
That's 1. He feels naked and vulnerable.
He ought to. And now I'm gonna roll 1 die from these guys.
That's 2 dice.
Oh, it's 2, even better.
Yeah.
Boom, baby.
Ah, your first victorious point.
The first of many.
The first of 1.
The first of 1. For large values of 1.
So let's go ahead and watch the end of this game. Unfortunately for Joe, he started off in a weak position. that actually tends to be the case in the beach storming scenarios. Is the Allied, of course, the Allied force starts off very exposed, and they're easy to gun down by the Germans, who are safe in their bunkers. Unfortunately, Joe was very heavily damaged in the first few turns. He did manage to rally a little bit towards the end, but not quite fast enough.
But so I want to attack with these guys and attack with this one. So,
do you want to move them up and attack?
Can I move? Yeah, I was gonna say, can I move these and still attack with these? I don't think that's true. I think is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? They have they have line of sight anyway. So if you don't move closer, if you don't mind getting just one die, you don't have to. If you want to move in, you can get 2 dice.
I'm going to move these guys in there.
Okay.
I'm going to attack. So can I attack with this guy, these guys, and these guys?
Yeah, so these each get 2 dice into there. He'll get 2 dice into there.
Okay, let's do that. So here we go. These guys into here, 2 dice. It's a grenade and a retreat.
Right.
And then here into here, 2 dice.
Oh, yeah, bastard.
Boom. And then here into here, 2 dice.
That's
Clean
nothing.
this.
Okay. Let's
Take
order
me out.
2 units on the left. These are gonna move 1 space. He's gonna get
2, right?
He's gonna get 3 into there.
Yeah, this is game.
Boom.
Game. Nicely done. Just like it happened. The Germans repelled the attack on Sword Beach. No, wait a minute.
So Joe, that was I think that was the second time you've played this game.
It was. It's a fun game. I like playing it. What's not to like about little plastic army guys?
Isn't that great? I mean,
it's
it's so much more fulfilling than pushing the little Avalon Hill style paper counters around with the numbers on them.
Well, that does bring back a lot of memories for me.
Well, it brings back memories of last month and watching awful green things from outer space.
Oh, that's what yeah. I don't have a very long memory. So yeah, it's a fun game. I had totally, from the footage, I just totally. I'm not sure I misplayed. I got pretty unlucky and I wasn't thinking very clearly.
There were a couple, if you don't mind me pointing it out, you did make a couple of newbie mistakes, which were the same sort of mistakes I made, in that when the first couple of times you play, you forget that the different types of units have different nuances and you want to treat them differently. A mistake that you were making that you can see pretty clearly is you had a tendency to move your armor right up to Karl's bunkers.
Right, and armor isn't affected by distance, isn't affected by range, which I forgot.
And the infantry, the closer you get, the better fighters they are. Armor fights this, you roll the same number of dice from any distance.
Yeah.
So really, the optimal way to do that scenario is to keep the armor like towards the ocean and to rush your men in.
Yeah.
You kind of did the opposite, and basically, since the armor are not very good at flushing the guys out of the bunkers.
Not at all.
Karl was able to just massacre your tanks.
He cleaned my clock.
Yeah. Well, it was basically...
It's a good thing I wasn't there on Sword Beach. I think that's the lesson I took away from that. I would have been a horrible commander. Another thing I really like about Memoir 44 is the rules actually aren't, they're not voluminous. So it's a pretty easy game to pick up, which in contrast to the other game we're going to feature today, I found it's kind of night and day.
Yeah, yeah. The next game we're going to talk about is Gnostica. This is a much more abstract war game that was published in 2001 in the book Playing with Pyramids by Looney Labs. The game was designed by John Cooper. You can also find a version on the web at the URL I am now flashing at you. It is a game that you play with icehouse pieces, and like a lot of icehouse games, it's got a strong, do-it-yourself factor in that you don't go to the store and you buy a Gnostica set. You just sort of, gather the components yourself and build your own set. A note about icehouse pieces, you may not be familiar with what I'm talking about. So basically, icehouse pieces are these pretty little pyramids that you buy. You may have seen these hanging up in your local game shop. They're these little plastic pyramids, very, very pretty little colors. And they come in different, you buy them in sets of 15. They come in 3 different sizes and various arrays of colors. Generally, 15 pyramids of one color are meant to represent one player in different icehouse games. And that is the case here. In order to play Gnostica, you need 1 icehouse stash, as they're called, for each player. You also need a tarot deck. In this game, the cards are territory that you are fighting over. That gives its war game aspect. You claim territory by playing pieces. This is the ice house pieces. In Gnostica, they're called your minions on the board being made out of the tarot cards that you're fighting over. The cards both give you victory points and define the actions that you can do during your game. When you have a piece on a card, you can basically use the ability that that card gives you. Generally, this is broken down by suit. Like a modern card deck, a tarot deck has 4 suits. The sword suits let you attack, the cups let you create things, the rods let you move things around, and the discs let you promote things.
Okay, I will play Pentacles to grow this guy.
Ooh. And reorient him.
And reorient him.
I'm actually gonna go ahead and
swords that guy.
I'm gonna swords the guy simply because I'm afraid.
He goes away.
Fear. Fear is my motivator.
Fear and intimidation.
Moving and whatnot. Okay, you
I cupped
with a cup. Okay.
the 10 pentacles.
I'm going to use the Magician.
Woohoo! As
The first major arcana we have, or well, the second, as a sword, and kill this guy.
One of the interesting and very elegant features of Gnostica that I like a lot is that the 4 suit powers can affect either pieces or the board itself, the cards that make up the board. And they do this in the same way. For example, when you use the rod power, you can use that to either move a piece, and that can be either one of your pieces or an opponent's pieces that you're targeting with one of your pieces, or you can shove an entire card around. So let's watch some of that in action.
Now that nothing else is on there,
Yes.
I can grow that
Yes.
using pentacles.
Right.
So you're gonna grow the territory.
The territory.
Ooh, fancy Dan.
To
the chariot, which is
2 rods.
2 rods.
Holy Hannah.
Yep, that goes there. Okay. And I will use...
So I've just, even though I lost 1 point there, I'm still...
Oh, he's still ahead.
So I'll use cups here to...
One way that a tarot deck is definitely and most famously different from a modern card deck is the trumps, or as the more mystical types call it, the major arcana. These are the 22 cards with the that have a name and a number associated with them, starting with the Fool, which is card number 0, and going through all the scary things like death and the devil, and ending at the World, which is 22, and it has all these sort of random seeming concepts like strength and the Hanged Man and the High Priestess and so on. In this game, these are basically your special action cards. Generally, they let you do a combination maneuver of several suit powers at the same time in a specific order. Some of them let you do something that none of the suit cards can do at all. Let's see a few examples of that.
Let's see. Yes, maybe it is time to do this. I'm going to play the Fool. I guess.
yes. Top card, put it in the discard pile, and it's optional if you want to do it, but...
It's a swords.
So you can use the swords with any one of your guys.
I guess I will swords this guy.
Suggestion?
Yeah.
Swords that guy.
Oh,
He's a bigger pain in your ass.
Yeah.
But
so I'll knock him down to a 2.
Knock him down to a 1.
From here, you knock him down to a 1.
So
I see. Yeah, I got
2.
you. Yeah. All right, I'm going to do that. I'll knock him down to a 1. That seems prudent. And then I'm got to do it again.
You turn over the
Turn over the next one. Play it. And that's a move, rods. So all I could do is move one of these guys off.
You could push one of those guys, or you could move one of your guys.
Okay.
Nice
Strangely, I am going to use the tower without the reorientation. So I'm skipping the reorientation.
You could orient one of your other pieces. You can split.
Oh, that's true.
As you explained.
Yes, as I explained and did not pay attention to, obviously.
So might you reorient this guy and then kill my guy?
Reorient that guy.
And then kill with that guy?
Then this guy
Right.
to kill this one.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sure.
So a difference between the games that you like, because I know you also like Settlers of Catan a lot.
I do.
And in which you have a common space, which is the board, and you're fighting over resources. But once you have a resource, it's yours. I mean, putting aside events like thieves stealing it from you.
Yeah.
Once you have a grain card, that's yours. In Gnostica, you're fighting over everything.
Yes.
So you have a limited country, you have a limited territory, and everything is up for grabs. And if you're on a card that gives you a power or gives you a resource and some points, those are yours this turn, but you're still fighting like hell to hold on to everything that you have.
I agree. It's a game where the sort of classic elements of strategy, that the first strike, the siege, all of these things are actually battle plans you can apply to Gnostica, and you can think of them in those terms.
Yeah.
And in fact, I expected sort of not a first strike, but an overwhelming strike at one point where I was hopelessly outnumbered of minions. I thought hopelessly outnumbered.
There was a part where I believe you were ground right down to nothing, and you had to do the thing where you put a one-pointer down on the board.
Yeah.
But you came back, and
Yeah, I don't know
think,
how.
well, it could have been that your opponents were holding back. I mean, I don't want to get in their heads, and they're not here. I mean, I'm wondering if for the sake of
Well, that's what happened to Napoleon. They beat him, and he came back.
It's true.
Yeah.
And look where he is now.
The point is, there are classic battle plans that apply very well to Gnostica. And even though Gnostica is an extremely abstract game, you're playing on tarot cards, which I certainly am not that familiar with. You're playing with abstract pieces. The elements of really classic wargaming come out very strongly.
So let's get to the electronic game for this month. Wargames are still alive and well on modern video game consoles, although they're not always called wargames per se. Usually they're often called tactical games or tactical RPGs. Primary examples right now include Final Fantasy Tactics, which are on different systems, Disgaea on PlayStation 2, and Advance Wars and Advance Wars DS on the Nintendo portable systems. They trace their lineage back to the Avalon Hill games. I never get tired of complaining about, bless their hearts. But somewhat more recently than that, they trace their electronic lineage back to console games from the early 1990s. The two major ones include, what was it called? Military Madness on the TurboGrafx 16, if anyone has any idea what I'm talking about, as well as Warsong on the Sega Genesis. Unfortunately for you, I had a Sega Genesis and a copy of Warsong in college, so that's what I'm going to be talking about now. The funny thing about Warsong is it still holds up pretty well. I had an urge to download now, when I say download, I'd like to note that I did buy a $5 cartridge for this about 12 years ago, so I am perfectly legally entitled to download an emulated version. Back to the graphics. So I did download an emulated version of Warsong, rather a ROM that I ran on a Sega Genesis emulator on my Mac, and it holds up really well. As you can see, it uses cutesy anime graphics, but they work well enough as you know what you're looking at here. It's not dissimilar from Memoir 44 in that it's a depiction of you get to move units on a map with terrain, and you move them against enemy armies. And again, a lot like an abstract war game like M44, you have 3 or 4 different types of units. Generally, you have infantry, horsemen, and archers. You can get some crazy fantasy type units like mermen and monks and wizards and so on later. It also has an RPG element in that you have commanders who have levels and experience points. They gain experience when either they or their soldiers win battles. But the game is separated into stages. Each stage has a different objective. It could be wipe out the enemy. It could be wipe out the enemy commanders. It could be rescue a NPC ally from getting killed. It could be just move to the other end of the map. The whole time you're getting wailed on by all kinds of different enemies. And the whole thing is story-driven, so it tells this epic, extremely melodramatic, very anime style, very Japanese war story. again, a lot like my complaints about Star Control last month, we're once again talking about a digital game from the early 90s where a lot of the rules for modern design principles don't really apply. In this case, the only time you can save your game using the game's built-in save commands is at the beginning of a scenario. You can also save in the middle, but once you restore, it erases your save file because it's very mean. And the scenarios are really long, so if you screw up, if you lose, or even if you lose one of your commanders, if one of your friends dies, you can keep playing, but your friend is just dead permanently for the rest of the game, and you can't bring them back ever. So generally, if that happens, you want to actually go back and prevent it. If you're playing the game on a Genesis, you can, if you die right at the end of a scenario, that can be 2 hours of your time in the toilet. In 1993, or if you're 18 years old, maybe that's all right, but nowadays that's not so cool. Fortunately, most any emulator lets you freeze your game state at any moment. So if that's how you're playing the game, you're going to lean on that feature pretty hard. And I actually do recommend this game. It's really cool and fun. Don't feel guilty about saving at any time, because if the game were designed by modern standards, it would let you do that anyway. So like I said, if you want to play the game in the most guilt-free way possible, I'd actually recommend getting a copy off of eBay. You can probably find it for $1 or $2 there, or any used video game store that's so cool they actually still have Sega Genesis cartridges. So go check it out if you're into the whole war game. If you play modern tactical games, like those I mentioned at the beginning, like Advance Wars, I would recommend checking out Warsong to see exactly where all this stuff started. And you'll probably be pretty surprised at how similar it is for being so old and how well it holds up. One announcement I would like to make is that the Gameshelf is now available as a podcast. You can actually find it on the iTunes Music Store if you search for Gameshelf or The Gameshelf, and you can subscribe to it for free, and you'll automatically download new episodes as they appear. If you have a video iPod, you can watch it that way. An interesting thing is that I edit the show down to a half an hour for the TV version, but if there's more interesting footage available that I can't quite squeeze into 27 minutes, I'll make a longer edit available and put that up on the internet as well. So it gives you more options. If you happen to be watching this on SCAT on Channel 3 in Somerville, awesome. Glad to see local viewers, but if you're, I welcome internet viewing too. So once again, that's gameshelf.jmac.org. So that's all for this month, and we'll see you next time. Maybe we'll successfully have restored Matt by then.
Let's hope.
Let's indeed.
Oh!